Thank you, Madam President. First, I would like to address Mr. Mansour's words about Resolution 2735. You haven't mentioned an important sentence about the release of the hostages. That's why we are sitting in this room, because that's what started the war, is the kidnapping of Israeli civilians. And I'm really disappointed, Mr. Mansour, not from Hamas. We had no expectations from Hamas, but from you and from the Palestinian Authority.
Est-ce que je peux répéter ce que j'ai dit en
Could I
entame
repeat
de
what I
cette
said at the
séance,
beginning of the
que le
meeting,
Conseil de
please, that
sécurité est
the
un lieu de
Security
respect
Council
et je
is a
prie
place
tous
of
les
respect,
intervenants,
and I call upon all
de
speakers,
respecter les normes
to
appropriées
respect
en matière
appropriate
de temps,
standards
de
in terms of
formulation
time,
et de
choice of
contenu dans
words
leurs
and
remarques.
content
Et on
in
ne
their
s'interrompt pas
remarks,
les uns les
and
autres.
we
Merci.
don't interrupt each other.
Je vous
Thank
prie
you.
de continuer.
I
Thank you,
ask you
Madam
to
President.
continue.
And I'm disappointed not from the Hamas. We have no expectations from Hamas. We know they are savages. But the Palestinian Authority, you are the moderate, the educated, and you are not capable after a year to say we condemn the atrocities of October 7th, we condemn Hamas, and it makes us wonder about the future, about ideas, but you are not able to say that. Neither President Abbas in the General Assembly, not one word. And Israelis are watching us. You mentioned the Palestinians, but also Israelis are watching us, and they're asking themselves, is there a difference between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority? When 70% of Palestinians in Judea and Samaria support the atrocities of October 7th? And I think that, yes, we want to see a day when there will be peace. But for that to happen, you have to make a distinction between evil and good, and you don't do that, Mr. Mansour. Madam President, it has now been 1 year since the darkest day in Israel's history, the October 7 massacre, a day when innocent lives were brutally taken, a day that scarred an entire nation. Over the past year, Israel has endured unimaginable pain. Families continue to grieve, not only for those they lost, but for those who remain in the grip of Hamas, held as hostages in Gaza. I would like to thank the Council members who joined us on Monday for the commemoration of this horrific event. At that event, you heard the heart-wrenching stories of the families of the victims. You listened to a mother who was here at the UN. She told the story about her 2 daughters who were murdered at the Nova Music Festival. She will never walk her daughters down the aisle, never again feel their warm embrace. You heard a story from a rabbi whose son's body is still held by Hamas's terrorists. He endured over 160 days of not knowing whether his son is alive, and he shared with us that his wife felt a sense of relief from the news of his death, because she told him that at least the pain was now only theirs to experience. Then we heard from a Muslim, Bedouin Israeli, who shared his horrid experience with a brother who remains a living hostage in the Hamas terror dungeons. And it's not only Jews. You have Christians, Muslims, not only Israelis, that are being held today by Hamas. In these stories, you saw the full extent of Hamas's depravity, a terror organization that makes no distinctions. They do not care about age, religion, or nationality. Their mission is singular, to murder everyone. Colleagues, some of you in this chamber support Israel's firm position that Hamas cannot remain in the ruling regime in Gaza. Others remain in the middle, indifferent. And tragically, some even offer their support to Hamas and its murderous objectives. However, if any of the Council members want these discussions to be productive, to reap any sort of benefit, every conversation should center around the simple truth. The future of Gaza must be a future without Hamas. We can discuss other options, but we have to agree about that. And I want you, Mr. Mansour, to discuss this idea and acknowledge that no future for Gaza if Hamas is there. We know what happened to your colleagues from the PA when they were ruling Gaza when Hamas took over. We know why you and President Abbas haven't visited Gaza for more than a decade, because you know what will happen to you there. We must start to envision Gaza freed from the clenched grip of terror. What would it look like? How would it work? How could Gaza thrive when it is free of this destructive regime? I, myself, and many Israelis, we have a vision for Gaza without Hamas. Aid would finally reach those who truly need it. You spoke about the aid. Do you know that in one day, about 50% of the trucks were hijacked by Hamas? I haven't heard that from the distinguished reporters we heard today. 50%, not one or two trucks, 50% being hijacked. In the future, the trucks carrying that aid would no longer be violently hijacked. Money intended for civilian welfare would not be diverted by terrorists. The money being donated would be poured into schools and hospitals, not weapons. The fuel sent to Gaza would be used in homes for cooking, not for launching rockets. Concrete would be used to build highways, not terror tunnels. Hamas has exploited the suffering of its people, using the misery in Gaza as a propaganda tool while they line their pockets and boost their arsenals. Our vision of Gaza is not an impossible dream. It is within reach. But it cannot happen while Hamas remains in control, diverting aid, exploiting resources, and worsening the suffering of their own people. On October 7 this year, 2 days ago, Hamas fired several rockets into civilian areas in Israel. The fact that this fight is not over, unfortunately. The Israel Defense Forces will continue to operate until all the objectives of this war are met, until Hamas's military capabilities are dismantled and all our hostages returned.